Hey guys, it's M4J here and welcome back to the Jeffries Network here on OpenTTD. Today we are working on the biggest project so far in the Realism initiative, and that is the Western Reaches line out of Gardcity St Michael. The first thing I did was, well, you saw it there, completely demolish the station throat and rebuild it from scratch. The brilliant thing about both this station and GSP was the fact that the rail corridor already existed. It just with the depot roads in and out and things like that, there was actually enough space to make a good number of roads in and out of the station. The not so great thing was on this particular line, there's a curve in the middle of it. So out of GSP it was a little bit easier because it's more of an S-bend. This was a 90-degree bend. Plus the depots are a little bit, well, I was about to say a little bit closer, but they're not really. They're actually further away, but they felt closer when you're working with the bend and things like that. So the decision was kind of taken to leave the platforms as they are, make sure that the slow lines all go out on one side of the lines and the fast lines on the other side, which is kind of what I've done with all the other stations, but this one it mattered a little bit more. And you also notice there I've put some flyovers in place as well, so that trains can move over without conflicting movements, crossing over on flat junctions. That is something that I do repeat a little bit later on in this episode as well. The other great thing was we can then have two roads in and out for fast lines, two roads in and out for the slow lines, and then the rest of the roads all go into the depot, which itself has also been rebuilt, which again you'll see in just a second. So we're about at the halfway point of the Gardcity Realism initiative. So we've done all the lines out of Gardcity St George, both on the eastern branch and the western branch. We've done all the lines out of Gardcity St Peter. There's only one line out of GSP. We've done all of the lines out of GSJ. I do still need to go onto that 2-track line that heads up north and round towards Nut Hill and put some more waypoints there. And we have also now done GSMI, which you will see by the end of this episode. GSMA, I am going to go back. I'll probably do that next episode actually. I will go back and not the lines that we built as part of City Connects, but the other lines that are used by the overground in Gardcity Southern. I will go back in and rebuild those lines so that they are also bi-directional in and out. They probably won't be built to the same extent as all the others, but a little extra something there might help out as well. This is me rebuilding the depot. Everything pretty much stays as is. I just rebuild it as sheds. I did also make it so there's only, I think there's only one line now going in and out of the depot to make it a little bit easier. I think that's what happened. And then here I'm adding additional lines in and out of Gardcity St Michael. Let me get the game open on my other screen here. I'm just going to shoot back over to GSMI because my preview screen on Sony Studio is a little bit blurry. Ah yes, I remember now. So yeah, there are additional crossovers which, hang on, let me get the thing back open. Yeah, I'm building them in now. And then you can see the fast lines are on the southern side compared to where the slow lines are. They then cross over the slow lines and become the fast lines. And then where the waypoints are, let me find the name of the place. It's Senston, isn't it? Slenston, that's the one, where the HLR terminates. And then also Carnwell. They're now the main waypoint locations for the Western Reaches line. So trains are going slower on average, but the efficiency should increase. And there is also a tunnel. Have I already gotten rid of it? Not quite yet. There is a tunnel that runs under the freight loop. You will see me, here it is. Demolish the tunnel, demolish all the town there, flatten the land, and that's where all of our main waypoints are going to go. Rebuild the freight lines in, because the freight trains are still running. I do still need to go back and redo all of them to match with the waypoints. And then resignal it and add the waypoints in and stuff like that. Believe it or not, rebuilding GSMI was actually the easy part of this episode. Because I said the rail corridor was already there. We had to do a little bit of demolition and terraforming and stuff like that, but overall it was a pretty easy job. It took about half an hour in total. This video clip I think originally was 1 hour and 59 minutes, which has now been shortened down to however long this video is. it gets a little bit harder from here on. So Wenfingfield was pretty easy, just rebuilt the waypoints, took out the old ones, rebuilt these ones using the same names I believe, and then added some additional waypoints. Also extended this line so that it's not an S-bend junction anymore, it actually converges on a curve, which means that the line speed overall can be higher. Added these extra waypoints in, and overall pretty happy with the eastern end of Wenfingfield. The western end pretty much the same. Again, I think I extended the loop local line to meet the curve. Yep, there it is. Added the extra signals in, added the extra waypoints in, and again, I'm pretty damn happy with the outcome. Again, this GSMI was the second easy bit. This was the easiest bit. Moningpool Falls was also pretty easy actually, because it was just adding in additional waypoints. I didn't have to rebuild any of the tracks or anything. And then we get to Sunington, and oh boy, did we get to Sunington. I'll wait for the time lapse to catch up a little bit more, because here I'm just renaming and re-signaling and stuff like that, just to make my life a little bit easier. Oh yeah, this curve I straightened out. I say straightened out. I rebuilt the platforms here so that I could make the land go down an extra tile earlier, and then I can build all this as one big diagonal rather than two 90-degree bends, and then match the signals up again, which again is easier than it sounds, matching signals, because you think you have to go one way on the diagonal and it turns out you actually have to go on the other, which can be quite irritating, but there you go, all done. And then we come over to Moningpool Falls, and on this side of the station it really is as easy as just adding in extra waypoints. And it's only really adding in extra waypoints on the fast lines, because the slow lines, the trains stop at the next station out anyway, so from there onwards it can just go at top speed. And then coming into Moningpool, because it stops at the station, from there on it goes at the slower speed. I think I do add one or two extra waypoints, because I did wonder about if there were freight trains going to be using this line, and obviously they're not going to stop at the station. But in any situation where the train stops at the station and that counts as a waypoint, I have then added that onto the waypoint list as well. So it will always be used as a waypoint, even if it's not used as a stopping location. Then on the southern end here, it was just a case of adding a couple more waypoints. I'm planning on reusing at least one of the waypoints that already existed from the freight terminal entrance. And then the northern side was complicated a little bit by the station and the fact that there's the S-bend. So I couldn't use the station itself as a waypoint. Not for the slow trains anyway, but for the APTs I can, because obviously they've got tilting technology. And then this is the hard bit. This is the hard bit. So you can see I'm basically getting rid of all the signals and all the waypoints on this line, and then demolish every single line in and out there, get rid of all the waypoints there, and then these two lines on the coastal route, get rid of all of them, and then this whole section, we build the signals in first, this whole section gets flattened, and then we rebuild the station approaches. I'm just going to get that up on my my screen as well, so I can talk you through a little bit more as to what the finished product looks like. It's a huge scar on the landscape. I have gone back and lifted up the majority of the land on the coastal, on the cliff side, and covered it all in trees, which you will see me cover it with trees, but I do need to go back and do the terraforming, so I'll have to cover it in trees again. I also rebuild the depot approaches here slightly, and that tunnel line that comes out there, which is mainly used by mail trains, but it's also used by some trains on the North Valleys line. You can see I've kept those the tunnel in place as well as an in and out route. Whilst I was doing this, I took an opportunity to actually rebuild some of the North Valleys line as well, so it's not all really tight bends and really sharp, steep slopes. There are still some steep slopes, and the diesel trains are going to have to work very hard to get up and down the steep slopes, but it's not as bad as it was, or at least I hope it's not as bad as it was, because it was bloody awful watching the trains. Particularly, I mean, the slopes themselves, there are slopes in the UK, and there are some trains that do struggle at times to get up the slopes, particularly up in Cumbria and in the Highlands in Scotland. It's one of the things that enthusiasts actually like, is you hear the diesel engines rev up when it's about to go up the hill. And that's also why the Class 802s exist, because they need more powerful diesel engines for the West of England lines. But with the North Valleys line here, the curves is what would annoy me, because they're really unrealistic looking curves. You know, the smallest you smallest curve you can get without it being a 90-degree turn in a single tile. So because of that, I did want to completely rebuild it. I rebuilt this twice. You'll see me build it here with all the west wind lines in situ. And then I noticed that actually there's a junction just a little bit further up the way where the North Valley's line separates. So you can see here I add the additional lines in. And originally it was going to be the North Valley lines diverged to the eastern side of the west wind lines. And then I thought, with the tight turns still, I wasn't actually fixing the problem. I was just moving it to a separate area, or moving it to a different location. So I actually went back and did it again with the west wind line, well actually with the North Valley's line going between the two west wind slow lines, and then I think there's a tunnel and a slope and something or other that fills in the gap. It's not the prettiest solution, but I think it's the one that works the best. Actually, here I rebuild the approaches to Mewood North and Mewood South. Overall, Mewood has grown quite a bit since I first built it. It doesn't look like it. It still looks like quite a small town, but trust me when I say it has grown. I am actually going to extend it. I'm going to build some bridges going over the West Winds line, and I'm also going to build a tunnel going underneath the North Valley's line so that it has more room to grow. But the biggest challenge really was this, making sure that the lines still meet up at the same level. You can see here I actually do a lot of terraforming to make sure that they do all meet up and they do go where they're supposed to. It was a very time consuming job doing this section, but it was worth it in the end. I know it will be much better when trains run over this now. And you can see here, this is when I decided to redo the West Wind line to meet up. So I think I might even have 2 stabs at this, because I wasn't happy with it the first time. So I think I'll go back and redo something. I definitely moved the fast lines as well, because I noticed one of them was slightly lower than the other. But to get there, it went down a slope, round the corner, and then up the slope again. So I rebuilt that, which then gave me more room for the slow line, I think it was. Let me have a look. And eventually what I'll do is the cross-country west line, where that meets up with Mewood, I'm going to completely rebuild that junction as well to make it even better. So currently it's 2 very tight bends, one just to the west of Mewood South and one just to the east. I'm going to rebuild it so that the one to the east actually joins up after Mewood, maybe even on this curve here, makes it a nicer looking junction through tunnel, something like that. And then on the western side where the freight trains run, I'm going to build a massive loop that runs almost down to the coastal line, just so it's not all tight bends and sharp. I say sharp all the time and I mean to say steep. So it's not all just sharp bends and steep inclines, that's what I meant to say. Because obviously freight trains, they struggle on hills. So you want to make it the incline as gradual as possible. Here's me messing around with waypoints. There's a lot of waypoints on this section as well. I think actually I build some and then I end up moving them to the other side of that. Yeah, here we go. I moved them to the other side of Mewood South because I thought actually if trains are using the junctions at Mewood, we might as well kill 2 birds with 1 stone and have the waypoints on the other side of the station for either diverging or conjoining trains onto the line, or trains that are getting ready to slow down to head towards Sunington. So just like with the Gardcity end of the line, the overall line speed will be a lot lower, but the efficiency and therefore the capacity of the line will be a lot higher as a result of the RI. And particularly with all these lines coming in and out as well. If you look at it, and let me count how many lines there are actually. So originally we could only have 1 train leaving and 1 train arriving on the West Winds fast line at any one time. Now, because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines going in before the coastal line joins, when it then goes up to 8, one of those lines has to be discounted because it's an exit line only. So there could be 5 trains arriving and 1 train leaving, or 3 trains arriving, 3 trains leaving, 4 arriving, 2 leaving. As long as it's below 5, any trains can be arriving or leaving at the same time, which just, it makes the capacity so much better. There is the slight complication of the tunnel that comes in from the the eastern side. I keep saying western, from the eastern side. But that, if it's used properly just by mail trains, I might even set up the signal so that only trains that don't carry passengers can use that line. The efficiency should go through the roof. And here's me rebuilding the depot lines so that the in-line doesn't go between the outlines, because that is not great either. Too many conflicting movements then. Sunington is probably the pinnacle of this whole project. It was the one that I was dreading the most because I knew it was the one that required the most rebuilding. Most of the other stations, the approach is, when I was designing them, I kind of had it in mind that at some point I'd have to rebuild, so I had it all with the right amount of space. Oh, here's me adding trees. So Gronwell, for example, there is a 90-degree bend out of Gronwell, but I can very easily add additional junctions to that, and it still work properly. At this point, I'm adding waypoints here for trains that diverge and use the passing lines. So stopping services and freight services use the outer tracks on these sections, and the APTs go straight through the middle. That's also the case down on the southern section, up as far as Preyborn, which again you can see here I'm just adding the extra waypoints in. These waypoints will be mainly used by freight trains to get them down to the right speed before they diverge. One of the great things about the Western Reaches line is I can have two speed limits. I can have the double-decker suburban services running at a maximum speed of 100 miles per hour, and then on the same section of track I can have the APTs running at 160 miles per hour. In real life this is the case. On the West Coast main line where the Pendolinos run, there are speed limit signs with two speed limits. One for, in fact there's a lot of lines that do this. Normally it's one for passenger trains, one for freight trains. But on the West Coast main line they also have one where it's one for regular services, so for example London Midland, or what used to be London Midland, now London North Western, or West Midland Railways. They will have a speed limit of 110, let's say, and then I think it's underneath it or above it there's like a slash, and then it says 125, which is the speed limit of the Pendolinos, the Class 390s, because they can run faster because of the tilting technology. I'm trying to remember, I think it's just called a split board. I think that's the name. Someone will tell me, someone always tells me. And then here I also decided that where the Western Reaches line branches off the third rail line again here, there should also be waypoints, because there are actually tight turns, so even the APTs might have to slow down a little bit for this, and then they can speed up again. Kingdon Hatton Parkway, again waypoints, additional waypoints. I think I demolish a tunnel and remove a hill on the southern side. And then we head down further towards, yep, there's the tunnel. We head down further towards Sanley. The area where the two lines diverge, again, there are waypoints. All the crossover points, there are waypoints. I think there's 3 on each side, so that the trains go at an appropriate speed to cross over. And again, the double-decker trains will have to go slower than the APTs, who can go faster. The APTs probably won't be the ones swapping over between lines though, so I think we're okay with the speed limits for them. Once we get down to Sanley, you'll notice I do a little bit of depot work. Here's me just surveying the route, see if there's any tight turns or anything that needs to be removed, and then I spot where the crossover is and add the additional waypoints accordingly. And then I add some additional waypoints there as well. I think here there is some point. It might be here? Maybe not. I think there is one point where I do a little bit of rebuilding on the line itself to give myself a bit more room, but I can't remember now. Maybe not. And then yeah, we get down to Sanley. I remove all of the waypoints that I'd only just put in actually quite recently, because I realised they're all in the wrong spot, and then rebuilt them appropriately. The lines themselves, the fast tracks and the slow tracks on both routes, I've left as they are. I do add some additional waypoints just here, and then I build. So the two slow train depots that we've got on the western side of the track, I actually remove, because I realise when I'm redoing the signalling at Sanley that for a slow train to go from its platforms to the depot, it has to cross over in front of all the fast trains. And even if I add dive unders and flyovers, it's still a hell of a manoeuvre to make that work. So you can see here, we had loads of spare land over at Sanley. So I thought, why not just build a slow depot and a fast depot? So I actually go ahead and build an entire new depot on the eastern side with the slow I keep saying slow. I mean, they're not slow. They're 100 miles an hour. The local, I suppose, suburban, whatever you might call them, trains, double-decker trains, they then use the depot on the eastern side. They then run into the eastern platforms at Sanley. Likewise, the Western Reaches trains, the fast trains, the APTs, and also the Javelins that are used on the Gardcity Connect services, they run into the fast platforms on the western side, therefore they come from the depot on the western side. It also means I can simplify the line coming in and out of the depot on the western side as well. I remove the tunnel and I remove the additional depots themselves. I think I also changed some of the signalling on the fast platforms as well, so that the trains that run into the platforms that can then reverse into the sidings, they're also the ones that go into the depot, and then the other platforms are just normal platforms in and out. So the APTs will tend to use the central platforms of the station. The ones that are going into the sidings, however, and also Javelins, they will use the westernmost, and then all the stopping services will use the easternmost. As for the trains coming from the southern coast line, which still hasn't been named, they will probably run into the centre platforms as well. I'm sure I did set it up, I just haven't remembered how I did it. I'm recording this audio at the same time as I'm recording the audio for the last episode. Obviously one after the other, of course. But it's actually been a week or so since I recorded the footage that you're watching. So I am going from memory to try and remember how to do it. This is kind of my streamlining program. So as well as being realistic with the RI, I'm also trying to be a bit more efficient with my video recording. So it does mean that if uni work gets in the way or whatever, I should have recorded enough episodes in advance so it doesn't become a problem. Off camera, I do actually add a flying junction on the northeasternmost junction. And again, I mean the footage is actually ended at this point, but I'll twiddle with it again so that it covers what I'm saying here. Now, there's a reason I added the bridge. I think it's so that trains that are entering the depot on the eastern side aren't blocking trains that are coming into the station from the two main lines. Yeah, that is why I did that. Okay, that's it for this episode. This was probably the hardest one to do so far. It probably won't be the hardest one I have to do in total, but we'll see about that. So next episode is probably going to be a very quick video of me rebuilding the central section of GSM-A. I'm not going to do the lines going in and out on the through section of Gardcity St Michael, because there's no point, because they go straight through. But the central section I will rebuild, and I will also add some additional waypoints to the eastern side of it as well, so we can run more trains in and out at more efficient speeds. But until then, guys, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and of course enjoying the series. Drop some comments down below with ideas for future episodes. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to click the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for continued support. I'm going to get a drink because I'm boiling hot and sweating like mad. And until next time,